My family insisted I give my baby to my aunt who couldn't afford another adoption but deserved a second chance. When I refused, they called me a homewrecker at Thanksgiving and publicly read a letter listing my failures as a mother. I went silent. 2 months later, I paid off my aunt's mortgage in cash, then transferred the deed into my daughter's name. At the next family dinner, I just smiled while everyone realized what that meant, and what they'd just lost forever. I, 34 female, am a single mother to a beautiful, wild-hearted, brilliant little girl named Maeve. She's 5 now. I was 29, newly divorced, and 6 months pregnant when this all started. My husband Lars, yes, that was really his name, had walked out a month earlier for a woman he met at his CrossFit gym. Her name was Brittany. I remember finding her lemon water in the fridge 2 days after he moved out. We didn't even fight when he left. There was no screaming. No begging. He said he wasn't ready to be a dad. Said he couldn't picture life with all the responsibility. I just nodded and let the door close behind him. That part hurt, of course. But what hurt more, what gutted me in ways I still haven't fully healed from, was how quickly my family turned their eyes away from me, and toward my Aunt Meryl. Meryl is one of those people who always had a way of inserting herself into other people's tragedies with a kind smile and a persuasive voice. She'd adopted a son years ago, Jude, from South Korea. He was sweet, a little shy, and always clung to her side. She and her husband Darren wanted to adopt again, but they were denied by the agency due to financial instability. Their house was in bad shape. Darren had been laid off twice. Meryl worked part-time at a Michael's craft store. And apparently, this made them more deserving of a child, at least in my family's eyes. My mother was the first one to say it. We were sitting at the tiny breakfast table in her kitchen, the one that's been around since I was 10. I was pregnant, swollen, and tired. She poured me peppermint tea and said gently, "Have you thought about what's really best for the baby?" I blinked. "You mean in terms of pediatricians? Or?" "I mean long-term, Camille. You're alone. Lars is gone. This baby needs stability." I sat in silence. She went on, "Meryl has already been through the process. She knows what it takes. And Jude, he's doing wonderfully. She's ready. She just doesn't have the funds. And you think I should give her my baby?" "I think," she said carefully, "you should think about whether keeping her is the selfless thing. Or the selfish thing." I didn't yell. I didn't even argue. I just stood up, said I was tired, and left. From there, it snowballed. I started getting concerned calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. My brother Neil, who lives in Grand Rapids and has 3 kids of his own, called one night to check in. But then somehow the conversation turned into a weird pitch about how generous Meryl was, how much she loved children, and how it's not about who the biological mother is, it's about who can provide the better home. Every time I said no, they found new ways to guilt me. "She's your family. She's already proven herself. Think about what you're taking away from Jude." I tried to ignore it. I focused on preparing for Maeve. I took maternity classes alone. I set up a nursery in the little condo I bought after the divorce. I worked extra hours while I still could. Then Maeve was born. 6 pounds 2 ounces. All cheek and stubbornness. She had this look in her eyes like she'd already survived a war. And for a while, things got quiet. Meryl came to visit us in the hospital. She brought a soft purple blanket and said how happy she was for me. But I could feel it. The tension. The way she looked at Maeve like she was sizing up a prize. Maeve was barely 3 weeks old when my cousin Leah reached out just to talk. We hadn't spoken in 2 years. We ended up on the phone for an hour. She circled around the issue at first, but then finally said it, "Meryl still really wants to adopt again. If you're struggling, it's not too late." I hung up without responding. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, Maeve was 7 months old. I almost didn't go. I had this heavy feeling in my chest the entire week before, but my mom insisted. She wanted just one family holiday where everyone could be together. I should have trusted my gut. I should have stayed home. We showed up late. I had Maeve bundled in a little mustard-colored coat with a hood that had barriers. Everyone oohed and awed and pretended they were thrilled to see us. But underneath the surface, I could feel the tension like electricity in the air. And then, right before dinner, my Uncle Edwin stood up. I have something to read, he announced. I remember Neil reaching for his wine glass and my mother going still. Edwin pulled out a folded letter and began reading. It was signed by 7 people. 7 family members. Including my own mother. The letter listed, in excruciating detail, all the reasons they believed I was an unfit or inadequate mother. My divorce. My emotional volatility. The fact that I worked full-time. That I didn't have a strong paternal figure for Maeve. They called me selfish. They said I was prioritizing my ego over Maeve's future. And the kicker? The letter called me a homewrecker, because by keeping Maeve, I was robbing Meryl of her chance to complete her family. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember picking up Maeve. I just remember the silence as I left. No one followed me. No one called. Not even my mother. And I didn't speak to any of them for the next 2 months. Not a text. Not a photo. Not an update. I grieved, sure. But I also planned. See, Meryl had always been vocal about their mortgage issues. Her house, a small, 2-bedroom near Luddington, was built in the 70s and falling apart. Darren had taken out a second loan a few years earlier and defaulted on part of it. They were underwater. I found their lender. I found the balance. And I paid it off. In cash, $118,000. Then, I worked with a real estate lawyer and quietly transferred the deed into a trust, under Maeve's name. She'd own it when she turned 25. No access before then. But the house? It was hers. Not Meryl's. Not Darren's. The next time the family saw me was at Easter. I came with Maeve in a little floral dress, her curls tied up in bows. No one said anything too bold this time. Just small talk, cautious looks. Midway through dinner, Meryl asked if I was still living in my condo or if I'd upgraded. I bought property, I said casually. Oh, my mom asked, cutting her ham. Where? Luddington. Everyone paused. Off Monroe Street, I added. Meryl's face went pale. That's our street. I smiled and said, yeah. I paid off a house there. Transferred the deed to Maeve. She owns it now. You're technically living in her house. And then I just kept eating. They haven't said much to me since. But I know they understood exactly what that meant. And I wasn't done. After that Easter dinner, something shifted. Not just in them, but in me. For the first time in over a year, I felt something like control again. Not revenge. Not satisfied. Just stillness. Like I'd finally stepped off the roller coaster they'd strapped me to. The weeks following the dinner were quiet. No calls. No messages. Not even from my mom. I expected some kind of follow-up, maybe a confrontation. But what I got was silence. Which told me all I needed to know. I wasn't invited to Jude's birthday party that summer. It was the first time in years I wasn't included in a family gathering, even as an afterthought. But I saw pictures online. Meryl smiled big for the camera, arm around Darren, standing on a porch Maeve now owned. Her little paper welcome sign, "Happy Birthday, Jude," was taped to a cracked window I used to look through every Thanksgiving. Now, I just scrolled past and made lunch for Maeve while she smeared peanut butter on the counter. That fall, my mom finally broke the silence. She came to my door with a Tupperware of beef stew like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't signed a letter accusing me of being unfit to raise my own child. I let her in. Mostly because I wanted to see if she'd say it out loud. She sat on my sofa, wringing her hands. I think, she said, things got out of hand. That was her version of an apology. Got out of hand. Do you think I didn't notice you signed that letter? I asked. She looked at her lap. Your aunt was in pain. Everyone thought you were overwhelmed. We were scared. Scared of what? She didn't answer. You weren't scared, I said finally. You just didn't believe I could do it. We sat in silence for a while. Maeve was napping in the next room. She has a home now, I added. One they tried to take from her. I don't agree with how they went about it, my mother said, avoiding my eyes. But Meryl only wanted another chance. She had her chance. She had a son. I didn't even get to be a mother yet before everyone lined up to take that from me. That's when she finally looked up. And maybe she saw it in me, what I'd become in the absence of their support. I wasn't the tired, soft woman they had steamrolled anymore. I was solid. Sharp. We didn't hug when she left. We didn't cry. She just put the stew on the counter, nodded once, and walked out. She calls once a month now. Never talks about Meryl. Never bring up the past. Just asks how Maeve is doing, what school she's attending, whether she likes art or soccer or both. I answer politely. I don't open the door more than necessary. The rest of the family followed suit, quiet distance. Passive regret. I'd become uncomfortable. A reminder. But not everyone disappeared. Neil, my brother, surprised me. It started with a photo. He sent it out of nowhere. His youngest, Millie, held a crayon drawing with Maeve scrawled across the top. We were talking about cousins, his text said. Millie asked why she's never met yours. I didn't reply right away. A week later, he sent another message. I know I was wrong, it read. I didn't back you. I didn't know how to stand up to them. I regret it. That one made me cry. I'd written off so many of them that I didn't expect a real apology. Especially not one that didn't defend, didn't excuse, didn't redirect. Just, I regret it. We met for coffee at a small shop near his place in Grand Rapids. I left Maeve with a sitter and showed up 10 minutes late on purpose. He was already there, staring into a cappuccino like it held the answers. He stood when he saw me. I didn't hug him. I just sat down. You look good, he said. Thanks. We talked. Not just about the drama, but everything. How he felt caught in the middle. How Mom pressured him. How he hated himself when he saw the look on my face that Thanksgiving. I thought about calling that night, he said. But I was ashamed. You should have been. He nodded. Took it. Didn't flinch. Eventually, we talked about the house. Is that legal? He asked. Putting it in Maeve's name? Completely. It's in trust until she's 25. She can't sell it. But technically, Meryl lives there at Maeve's discretion. He let out a low whistle. That's brutal. No. That's justice. They tried to take her from me. Now, they live in a house she owns. Every window, every wall, every pipe they use, hers. He sipped his coffee and leaned back. You've changed. I had to. We started seeing more of each other after that. He brought his kids over once a month. Maeve loved it. She called Millie her twin cousin even though they're 2 years apart and look nothing alike. It's strange, isn't it? The way people can slice you open and then slowly sew the edges back together with time and effort. But the scar stays. My mom eventually asked to come to Maeve's birthday party that year. I said yes. But I didn't invite anyone else. The party was small. Just a few kids from daycare, Neil's family, and my neighbor who brought cupcakes with blue frosting that stained every child's face. My mom brought a gift, a book, The Paper Bag Princess. She wrote in the front cover, to Maeve, for when you realize how strong your mother is. Love, Grandma. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So I did both, later, after everyone went home. But I still didn't let her hold Maeve that day. I wasn't ready. I think she knew. A few weeks after Maeve's birthday, I got a certified letter in the mail. It was from a lawyer in Muskegon. Meryl and Darren had officially filed a petition to dispute the ownership of their home. I read it 3 times, standing in the middle of my kitchen, my hands shaking over a cooling cup of coffee. They claimed unjust enrichment and emotional distress, accusing me of coercing them out of their property and exerting undue influence on a vulnerable family. Vulnerable. That word bounced around my head like a curse. They were vulnerable? I called my attorney, the same woman who'd helped me set up Maeve's trust. Her name was Natalie, mid-40s, sharp, no nonsense. She scanned the letter while I sat across from her with clenched fists. After a long pause, she said, "It's a bluff." You're sure? They signed the deed willingly when the mortgage was paid off. No coercion. No fine print. I dotted every I and crossed every T. This is just noise. But they're trying to scare me, right? She leaned back, folding her hands. They want the house back. But more than that, they want you to be afraid. They want you to feel like the villain. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I thanked her and drove home in silence. That night, after Maeve went to bed, I sat on the couch with a bottle of wine and pulled up the family Facebook group. Yes, we still had one. My Aunt Penny, neutral Switzerland in all of this, was the admin, and no one had posted since last Christmas when someone uploaded an old photo of Grandma's house in the snow. I took a deep breath and typed, "Just a quick PSA for those interested, Meryl and Darren are trying to sue their 5-year-old niece for owning the home they live in. The same home they tried to get by pushing me to give up my daughter. If anyone has questions, I'll be happy to forward the paperwork. Otherwise, keep my name, and my daughter's, out of your mouths. All the best, Camille." I logged off after that. The next morning, the post had 48 comments. I didn't read them all. But I saw enough. Penny had left a long one, saying how ashamed she was of the family's behavior and how appalled she was that it had come to this. Neil had written, "She's braver than all of us. You don't like the consequences? Maybe don't treat people like they're disposable." And from my mom, nothing. But that afternoon, I got a voicemail from her. "Camille," she began, her voice low and uncertain. "I saw the post. I didn't know they were doing that. I don't know what to say. Call me when you're ready." I didn't call her back. I didn't need more words. Not yet. The lawsuit, of course, went nowhere. My attorney sent a swift, clean response that shut it down cold. Meryl and Darren went quiet again. I heard from Neil that they considered moving, but Darren's job was close and they couldn't afford anything else. So, they stayed. In Maeve's house. Sometimes I think about sending them rent reminders just to twist the knife. But I don't. I don't need to. They already live with the humiliation. Every time they flip a light switch or take a shower, they know who made that possible, and who holds the power. Around this time, Maeve started asking more questions. "Why don't we see the Grammy a lot?" she asked one night as I tucked her in. "We do sometimes," I said carefully. "But not all the time." "Did the Grammy do a bad thing?" I paused. "She didn't stand up for us when we needed her." Maeve was quiet, then nodded. "Okay. I don't like people who don't stand up." I kissed her forehead, my heart breaking a little at how much she already understood. That summer, I enrolled her in a gymnastics class at the local YMCA. She made 2 best friends in a week. Her coach told me she was stronger than she looks. I laughed and said, "Yeah, I know. She gets that from me." Sometimes, I think about the version of life they wanted for her. Raised by people who see her as a solution to their sadness. Passed off like a hand-me-down. Surrounded by people who viewed her as a second chance instead of a first priority. Instead, she got me. Messy, imperfect, fierce me. And slowly, our life kept growing. By fall, I got a promotion at work, senior people operations manager. I bought Maeve her first bicycle and took her to a pumpkin patch in Empire, near Sleeping Bear Dunes. We rode the ferry to Mackinac Island one weekend, just the 2 of us, and stayed in a tiny bed and breakfast with mint-scented pillows and a porch that looked out over the lake. She told me, "This is the best day ever," at least 4 times. Back home, things stayed quiet with Meryl and Darren. Too quiet. Then, one Friday in November, Neil texted me a screenshot. It was a post from Meryl's private Facebook. "We're considering starting a GoFundMe to move to a new place. We've been through a lot emotionally over the last year. If anyone knows of housing resources for families displaced by legal disputes, please DM." I stared at the screen. Displaced. Legal disputes. They made it sound like I'd evicted them with no warning, like they were victims of a system, not their own manipulations. Like Maeve was some corporate entity that had pushed them out. I didn't comment. I didn't share it. But I did screenshot it and file it under a folder I'd named just in case. And that same night, I opened a fresh Google document. At the top, I typed, "A letter to my daughter, for the day she asks why, because I know one day, she'll want the whole truth. Not a fairy tale. Not the edited story. But the truth of how her mother stood alone in a room full of people who wanted her gone, and stayed anyway. Of how she fought not just for custody, but for dignity. Of how love sometimes looks like silence, and sometimes like vengeance. And sometimes, it looks like a deed transfer. The weeks after Meryl's Facebook post passed quietly. Neil said she never launched the GoFundMe, too many uncomfortable questions came in her inbox. Apparently someone from her church asked why she needed help when she owned a home. That was the beginning of the unraveling. Eventually, Darren's hours got cut again at the local tire shop. Jude switched schools after a bullying incident. Meryl tried to keep quiet, and the water heater in their house gave out. They asked Maeve's trust for a repair reimbursement. My lawyer declined, as per the legal terms they signed. That was my final confirmation. They had no idea what they'd agreed to. They were desperate for a lifeline, and I had given them one, but on my terms. And when you sign something out of greed instead of gratitude, you eventually pay in a currency you didn't expect. Still, I said nothing. I kept Maeve out of it. I kept living. I kept building. By the time Maeve turned 6, I'd been promoted again. I moved us to a slightly larger house in a better school district, nothing showy, just more space for her books and climbing gym. She started calling her little reading nook her office. I didn't correct her. And then, out of nowhere, in late October of this year, I got a formal letter from a local real estate broker. Meryl and Darren had put in a request to buy the home from Maeve's trust. They wanted it back. I laughed. Not just a chuckle, a full, sharp laugh in my living room that scared the cat and startled Maeve, who was coloring at the table. They want to buy the house back? I asked Natalie, my lawyer, on the phone later that day. Yep, she said. They claim they're ready to reclaim their independence. But they're offering way under market. Decline it, I said. And send them a new proposal. Want me to increase the price? No, I replied. Make them an offer they can afford. But with terms. She waited. I took a deep breath. They can buy the house. But only under the condition that it is renamed the Maeve Ross House, and a permanent marker is placed on the property acknowledging that it was gifted by Maeve's trust during their time of need. The plaque has to stay indefinitely. It's part of the deed. Natalie let out a quiet whistle. Petty or poetic? Justice, I said. For the girl they tried to erase before she was even born. I expected them to reject it. But desperation has a way of swallowing pride. 2 weeks later, the offer was accepted. They signed the new deed. They wired the payment. And a month after that, the brass plaque was installed on the front porch. It reads, "The Maeve Ross House in honor of the girl who gave more than she was ever given." 2019, Infinity. I didn't attend the installation. But Neil drove by and sent me a photo. In it, Meryl is standing behind the porch railing, looking down at the plaque, her face unreadable. He captioned it, "Looks like it finally hit her." That Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner. Neil came, with his wife and kids. My mother showed up early and brought her famous buttermilk rolls, awkwardly nervous but calm. Penny came, too, to bless her, with stories and wine. Even Aunt, the only one who called Meryl manipulative from day one, showed up wearing a cardigan covered in tiny turkeys. I roasted a turkey, made cranberry chutney from scratch, and baked a pie with Maeve that had more flour on the floor than in the crust. She made everyone wear handmade hats she crafted out of construction paper and glitter glue. Neil's son, who's 10 and hates everything, even wore his the whole time. When it was time to eat, I stood to say something. The room went quiet. I looked around the table. At the faces that had grown older. Softer. Warier. I looked at Maeve, smiling proudly in her glitter hat. I'm thankful, I said, for second chances. But more than that, I'm thankful I didn't give mine away when everyone told me to. I met my mother's eyes then. She nodded, slowly. No one brought up Meryl. No one dared. Later that night, when everyone had gone home and the dishwasher hummed in the background, Maeve curled up next to me on the couch. Mom? Yeah, sweetheart? Why does that house have my name on it? I paused. Because, I said slowly, brushing her curls away from her forehead, when you were a baby, there were people who thought you belonged somewhere else. But I knew better. So I made sure your name would always mean something. She nodded. Can I paint it pink someday? I laughed. Maybe. When you're 25. Okay, she yawned, eyes fluttering. I want it to have stars. You already gave it stars, I whispered. They just don't know it yet. That night, as I watched her sleep, I realized something: the best revenge isn't cruelty. It's clear. It's standing tall in the wreckage they tried to build around you and saying, I made something beautiful anyway. They tried to shame me. They tried to take my daughter. They tried to bury me in guilt and call it family. Instead, they got a plaque with her name on it. Forever. And I got to raise the fiercest little girl I've ever known, free, loved, and wholly, unmistakably mine.